If you ask the medieval Norsemen what they love to eat for breakfast, they might show you something like this. Traditionally made from skimmed sheep's milk, dating back thousands of years, it's said that the Vikings commonly made this soft cheese from skimmed milk of their robust dairy sheep roaming the volcanic grassy knolls, passing their family's recipe down through the generations from mother to daughter. Hello shepherds, welcome back, and if you're new here, hello. This is where we talk all things sheepy. My name's Megan, and today we're talking Skyr. I really wanted this to be as authentic to the mother country as possible, and found that there's basically two main ways to make Skyr. They're pretty close to each other though, which we'll get into. Also, I found that the closest culture that's commonly available is through the Provisions brand. I've already created a mother culture from some whey that I poured off previously from some yogurt, and then froze some yogurt bits just in case the whey wasn't viable, so we can create our mother culture, which is basically the same process as cultured buttermilk or a mother culture, which I'm going to show you how to do here as well later. So for ingredients, we'll need some milk. I'm using sheep's milk from my mini flock of minis and our one big dairy girl. Ironically, the Shetlands are distant cousins of the Icelandic sheep, the sheep breed that the Vikings milked historically. And then we have our culture. Optionally, for the cheese version of our Skyr, we'll need rennet, of which I'm using a single strength animal rennet. So let's go ahead and dive right in. First, we're going to make the one that's closer to the yogurt family and also will form a basis as our mother culture. So let's begin by pouring our milk into a heavy bottom saucepan or pot. Stirring frequently, we want to slowly and steadily heat up our milk to around 180 to 185 degrees Fahrenheit or 82 to 85 degrees Celsius. This unwinds our proteins and makes our final product extra creamy, but also by slowly heating up our milk, it prevents our milk from scalding. If you don't have a thermometer, I'm heating up the milk to just when there's a bit of steam. Some of the water is evaporating out, and once we've reached our target temperature of 185 about, or 85 degrees centigrade, we're going to turn off our heat and set our pot aside to cool back down to our culture's favorite temperature. So between 110 to 115 degrees Fahrenheit or 43 to 46 degrees Celsius. Basically, just above a feverish body temperature. So I'm going to transfer my milk to an already clean and sterilized jar and then pop it into our fridge to cool down just a touch faster. After a couple hours, it's already looking like we're in that perfect temperature range for our heat-loving culture. So I'm adding some of our whey from our mother culture and then mixing it in really well. If you want to use a spoonful or less of yogurt, it's super thick, so it really helps to mix it in with some of the warmed milk, and then adding our culture milk mix back into our prepared milk jar. Next, we want to wrap it up with a nice towel or blanket. Ideally, we want to move our jar to continue to ferment in a draft-free and warm area for a few hours to overnight. As this is, it makes a great mother culture. But for our next step, we're going to compare our ferments tomorrow. Okay, so let's go ahead and make our cheese version, which is considered the more authentic Skyr. Just like before, we want to add our milk to a heavy bottom saucepan or pot. Stirring often, we want to slowly heat our milk up to the same temperatures of 180 to 185 degrees Fahrenheit or 82 to 85 degrees Celsius. And once it reaches our temperature, we want to pull off our heat to cool down to a feverish body temperature if you use your finger for a thermometer, or 110 to 115 degrees Fahrenheit or 43 to 46 degrees Celsius. At this point, it's safe to add in our culture, whether it's fresh, frozen, whey, or even some of that mother culture. I'm using about a teaspoon and then stirring it in well to fully incorporate. Next, let's dilute our 2 drops of liquid rennet in about 1/4 of a cup or 50 milliliters of non-chlorinated water. I'm using our well water, and that's what we have. So after diluting our rennet, we're going to add our rennet water mix to our cultured milk and stir well for about 30 seconds. Then pop on our lid to help preserve some of that heat and wrap it into a towel to help insulate our cultures. To incubate for a few hours, but really ideally overnight at 100 degrees Fahrenheit or 37 degrees Celsius. It's okay if it varies a little bit, but we want to make sure to stay in our ideal range for the best bacteria growth. It's the next day, so let's compare our jars and strain the whey out. Right off the bat, you can see how there's a noticeable difference between our rennet Skyr versus our more mother yogurt style Skyr. The color cast is from the whey that's separated out from our curds, and some of that cream rose but got trapped in the sides between the jar and the whey. This is probably because I shook the jar a little bit when I was mixing it on the way to the incubation chamber. On the other hand, our mother or yogurt style is white. It looks thick, but we need to crack these bad boys open to find out for ourselves. First off, we need a fine woven cloth for draining these. The cheesecloth that they tend to sell in the grocers tend to be a bit too open weave for this type of cheese, so a cut up pillowcase or sheet works really well. Starting off, our yogurt style mother culture is super thick. I can see why some folks really just stop here sometimes. I'm going to transfer all of it to my draining cloth. Let's go ahead and grab our first spoon. It's so thick. Can you see how crisp and solid that spoonful is? It's a bit subtle here, but there's this thread-like texture to the culture, and it kind of reminds me of natto. And it smells sweet, it's aromatic and fresh smelling. Because it's so thick, I'm gonna try and plop everything in this bowl and cloth. I don't know about you, but do you really need extra dishes? I'm gonna make this work. Okay, so everything's in our bowl and it managed to fit. So let's go ahead and get this ready to drain and work on our other jar. I'm using a ricotta basket as a colander. I really don't own calendars, just colander shaped objects. I think I'm going to start by draining the bulk of the whey out first and then transfer our curds over to drain further. I think it's pretty neat how the curds kind of formed a solid mass inside, a sort of reflection of the jar. Is it going to be rubbery or is it going to be more like chev or cork-like? Let's go ahead and find out. With the first spoonful, you can see how there's a couple bubbles. And I want to stop here and say, if you see bubbles like this throughout, it's a sign of a coliform bacteria and to toss it out. I did shake the jar, and judging by how it looks in this one spoonful where part of it's smooth and the other part's bubbles, I'm going to say it's most likely due to the frozen bubbles from shaking it, just because it's only in this one small section. The curd texture is both thick and smooth throughout, and it's barely releasing anyway as I'm scooping. The scent is light and heavenly. I don't detect any hint of rubberiness with each spoonful, which can happen when a person adds too much rennet. So let's go ahead and plop this out. It is too big for our mold, but it's so thick, I'm sure it'll work. I just love how it just keeps its shape of its jar, but let's go ahead and ruin that by tying up our cheesecloth and setting it up to drain. If you want to hang them to drain, it does drain faster hanging than when lining a basket with cheesecloth and just propping it up. Just to make sure to drain all the way as needed, whether you're propping it up or also, before I forget, if your whey is milky or showing bits of white leaking out, it means you're losing your curds. So double your cheesecloth up and then re-strain everything. It'll get you nice and sorted. If you're hanging a bag, tying it in a solid knot and placing it over a container, whether it's a cabinet handle or hooked on a spoon over a pot, works really well. Counter space is pretty valuable in a small kitchen. So I'm going to pop it in the fridge and finish up tomorrow. Ideally, you want to let them drain for a few hours, somewhere between 3 to 4, and then check for consistency for your preference. Okay, so let's go ahead and crack these open and do a taste test of both our mother style and cheese style. Even though the process is similar, the final product for both are so much smoother and creamier. It really isn't yogurt in terms of flavor, texture, or character. So if you're expecting yogurt, this is really on another level. Our mother culture or yogurt style is drained, and for a traditional touch, let's go ahead and add a bit of cream back into it. The milk is fresh milk from this morning, so there's really not much cream rising, so I didn't really add much cream. If you look closely, can you see how it forms these neat little ribbons? It's so thick, but does it really need cream? What do you think? Okay, so this is perfect. Now let's take out our renneted cheese Skyr to compare. Unwrapping it, it's so beyond smooth and creamy and thick. Do you see how it's sort of firm but also soft? And there's also these soft, stiff peaks. probably due to the higher protein levels in the sheep's milk and how these cultures feed. I do have links to articles in the description on how that works specifically if you want to get distracted. Sometimes when the curds are draining in bags, it drains unevenly. So the curds resting next to the side of the bag tend to drain more well than the curds that are resting in the center of the bag. I'm going to go ahead and stir these curds around, mixing the layers around to get a better idea on how well these curds drain. And in feeling it, it feels super smooth, almost like a mascarpone, but less firm than, say, a cream cheese block. Even though it's skimmed milk, it feels so creamy. Do you think it needs more cream, or do you think this is good as is? I wanted to make another cheesecake and thought this would be really fun to add some skyr to mix in with the ricotta. But let me know, are you familiar with skyr? Does it live up to the hype for you, or does it fall flat? So for comparison's sake, I've heard people call it yogurt, and it is sold in the yogurt aisle here, locally. But if you make yogurt, this is very much not yogurt. If you look at how the proteins create almost these soft peaks to the curds, and the nature of how the whey acts even is different to the whey from other cheese processes, in that it's more syrupy than watery. For taste, both the mother style and cheese style are sweeter than traditional yogurt. So I really hope you give this recipe a chance, especially if you like to make butter or are looking for a lower fat but creamy cream cheese alternative. And if you've made it this far, an extra special thank you. I appreciate you. And if you've enjoyed diving into the sheep side of the dairy world, hit that subscribe button and the bell. Like if you want to let me know to make more videos like this. And until next time, here's the goodbye from the flock. Ta-tas.